as we get started. In fact, the title of this particular seminar is Coronado, and I understand that that's kind of a put together word of the coronavirus and tornado. Shows what we're in. And we want to introduce our speaker. So at this time, we want to welcome you to the Coronado Effect seminar. This will be presented by Dave Ketelsen. He is the pastor of the Hamilton Community Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Chattanooga area. He's been there for about 11 years. He has a wife, Debbie, 4 children, and at least 2 grandchildren. Is that right, Dave?
That's right, just 2 grandchildren.
Just Chicago. Okay. So we'll turn the time over to him as he presents to us the Coronado Effect.
Hey, thank you, Ralph. I really appreciate that. Hey, I'm looking forward to just spending some time with you. I want to make certain you understand we will have some question and answer time at the end. So, and if you have a question, you can just use the chat box. I'll be checking that periodically too. I see some of my friends on there too. So shout out to you guys. I won't mention your names, but so glad you've connected. I want to begin with just a short prayer and then we'll get started. Father in heaven, thank you for your word. It speaks life. And I pray that as I just share some things that have happened here recently at Hamilton, a little bit of experiences, I just ask that your Holy Spirit will guide us. In Jesus' name, amen. So the word Coronado Effect came from one of my my externs, Michael Black, and said, you know, the tornado and the coronavirus all at once. But you know, one of the things about Hamilton, it actually is one of the best things that happened to us. It helped us to think outside of the box and find other ways of reaching our community. So I want to start by just sharing some fun facts about Chattanooga that I thought were kind of interesting. In 1969, Walter Cronkite said that Chattanooga is the dirtiest city in America, the filthiest, dirtiest city in America. Guess what? In 2015, this city became the best city ever by Outdoor Online. In fact, it's the #1 outdoor city in the nation. And in fact, Chattanooga, per capita, more people attend church, and our people are more churches per capita than any other city in the nation. Guess what's #2? It's Las Vegas. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, San Francisco is the most godless city in the nation, and also I heard that Mississippi, I was looking on there, has the most atheists. But in Chattanooga, we decided to look at Chattanooga and ask ourselves, since there's 28 Seventh-day Adventist churches in Chattanooga, one for every fundamental belief we have, Chattanooga doesn't just need another church, it needs a different kind of church. And Pastor Mark before me kind of set the precedence of that. And so we've been trying to connect the disconnected by sharing Jesus through loving and serving. And that's our mission, our vision statement, connecting the disconnected. Now, we're all familiar with Proverbs 19:18. It says, where there is no vision, what? The people perish. And so we want to make certain that we're connecting with the disconnected. Also, too, I just want to share a little bit about me as we get going. I won't take long on that, but I was born in California, actually Hollywood, never at all got connected with any stars, except for, remember Brady Bunch? So there was the youngest one in Curls, her name was Cindy, actually Susan Olsen. I was at a birthday party. It was an ice skating rink, and I was probably 7, 8 years old, and this this girl comes out, Cindy. Uh, she picks me out of the crowd, and we ice skate hand in hand together. So, anyways, Susan Olson, who was Cindy from Brady Bunch, she held my hand, and she chose me out of all the kids there at her party. And so that's the closest I ever got to Hollywood. I told my friend she was my girlfriend. We never saw each other again, so that never happened. But growing up there, my folks split, and then we moved up from Los Angeles to Santa Cruz, SoCal. And my folks didn't. My grandmother actually raised us. We moved to a little town in SoCal, and my grandmother would send us to this church. She had an Adventist friend, and then my parents didn't like the public school, so sent us to a Christian school. And it just so happened to be a Seventh-day Adventist school, which we knew very little about. It was called Virgil Hazel Memorial Junior Academy. And I can remember taking my lunch, and I opened my box, and the kids would ask, is that, because we ate ham, is that a ham sandwich? So you're not supposed to bring that. Can we have some? So my folks started asking questions. My dad wanted nothing to do with religion. His dad passed away when he was a teenager. The preacher said, your dad's watching you in heaven, and it turned him off. His dad came from Denmark. He was the inventor of the milk carton. Can you believe that? The original milk carton. So my dad wanted nothing to do with, he was Lutheran, they were Lutheran, with Christianity. My mother was actually a Jehovah's Witness. So we started going to this Adventist school. My folks asked questions. Pastor Heinrich came and visited with us, and we were all baptized together, all 6 of us. Now, as a little boy, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about this message. I was 10 years old, and as I grew, so did my faith. But I'll never forget, I was asked if I could sit with some of my buddies, and I think his name was Mark. We were sitting in the back, and next to the back row, because the ushers sat back there. I was telling this story in church. We call them the hushers. They were always trying to keep us quiet. And while we were back there, we were just giggling, and old Sister Set You Straight came walking down the aisle with her big old black Bible, and she leaned in and she started thumping our knees with her Bible. She says, don't you boys know that you drive the angels away when you giggle like that? Now, I had no idea where she got that, you know, that we were driving the angels away. I'd never heard that. That's because she was reading from 2 Opinions chapter 2, the most read chapter in all of Scripture. But I didn't know much about Christianity and religion, even though I was baptized. But I began to understand a little bit more as I went through our schools and went to our boarding academy and Monterey Bay Academy. And then I went to college, and I discovered these guys who started a connection with Jesus. And this really turned my life around. And I want to share something with you, because as we get going, this really changed the trajectory of my entire life. I took a class from Morrisman and began to understand it's about a relationship. It's all about moving away from a behavior-centered religion to a Savior-centered relationship. And there's 3 things that are very important that I learned from him that I think would help anyone in their ministry. Now, even if you're not a pastor, you're in ministry. And these 3 things really just made all the difference to me. So by saying that, moving away from a behavior-centered religion to a Savior-centered relationship, that's because doing right by not doing wrong is not right. Being good by not being bad is not good. It's about a relationship, a connection. So here's the 3 things. A Christian does what is right because he is a Christian, never in order to be one. So that's number 1. Number 2, Christianity and salvation are not based on what you do, but on who you know. And number 3, our good works have nothing to do with causing us to be saved, which means our bad works have nothing to do with causing us to be lost. That's Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10. Well, when I was in college, I felt impressed to read the Bible. I was going to read it even if it killed me. I thought at least maybe I can shake my fist at God, and said, I tried. And as I was reading, I started learning about this man who died for me. And I stood at the cross long enough where he changed my life. And I'll tell you, it's just like Roger Morneau used to say, every day we need to spend some time, especially in Matthew 27 and 28. He read it every day. And, spending that time with Jesus. Now, here's, I think, the most important thing that I learned in my ministry that I want to share with you that leads into all what I'm going to say next. There's only one fight that we're to fight. In all of Christianity, there's only one fight. Every other fight is not worth fighting, and that is a fight for the fight of faith, the connection with Christ. So there's only two commandments. That's to love God and to love others. It's really one big command, is to love. And because of our love for God and our friendship with him, we want to love others. Now, most churches aren't known for anything relevant in their community. And so although the tornado hit us, and so did COVID, our church has never been more alive. Never have we actually reached the community better than we ever have before. In fact, it's one of the best things that happened to us in a way. When tragedy strikes, sometimes, good things fall apart so that better things can fall together. And I love this statement and I got it from E. Cleveland, that evangelism isn't dead. It's just that dead people don't do evangelism. I thought that was pretty good. Evangelism isn't dead. It's just dead people don't do evangelism. It reminds me of this tombstone of this pastor, and he had written on there, whether it was true or not, I kind of liked it. It says, "Go tell the church that I am dead, but they need not shed no tears. For though I'm dead, I'm no more dead than they have been for years." Now, a church that's really on fire for Christ is going to be a church that's thinking more outwardly than they do inwardly. Mark Finley did a study on churches, and they went back through their board minutes, and they discovered that the declining churches were focused inwardly. Every one of their minutes, they talked about all the things within the church, the problems, and trying to figure out what they needed to do. The churches that were growing and thriving were always thinking about their community. What could they do for their community? And that just made a huge impression on me. What are we doing for our community? What can I do to reach my community? So when the tornado hit, my granddaughter, who lives in Chicago, and go ahead and put that picture up there. Here's a picture of my granddaughter and my grandson. And they're both heard about the tornado. And so aren't they cute? Of course, I would say that. So this is Belle, Annabelle, and Asher. And my son is Austin, Amy, Annabelle, and Asher. So she wrote me this letter. Let's go to the letter there. She sent this letter, which I've hung on to this little letter thinking about, hey, this is the beginning of what Hamilton is going to do. It says, "Dear Grandpa Ketelsen and Gigi and Jalen Collin." So I have two boys that have grown out of the house and two at home. "When can we have a sleepover? I am sorry for the tornado hitting your church. Here is money from our kids' jar. I hope it helps fix your church. Love, Annabelle Ketelsen." So there was $6 or $8 in there. And I thought, this is such a neat thing for a little kid to do. And it just kind of really made me think, what are we going to do in our community? And there were others. It wasn't just me. It was the church that says, what are we going to do? So what we did is this. We went down to the YMCA. This was right afterward. The tornado hit on the Easter morning. And then there was a volunteer command center. And so we went down there, and I went in and I talked to our mayor. I talked to the people in charge, and I said, what can we do? And so we started feeding the community. And one of our members, he had a gelato, Italian ice thing. We fed them. I can't remember what we fed them. Was it haystacks maybe? I think it was haystacks that we fed. And we fed, I don't know how many meals right there at the Y. So we did this every day, and we were doing it, line workers, volunteers, people that were hit by the tornadoes. And so we started going out in the community, taking meals, and then we decided, hey, let's keep this going. We did this for about, I think, 6 weeks. almost 2 months, every day, except for Sunday, we took that day off. And then we decided, let's make this a weekly thing. So on Tuesdays, we started setting up at our church. And I had some pictures, they didn't all work out. And we set up a big awning, and we started setting up our right up on the street, and there were cars coming in, and we'd feed about 75, 80 people. Then it went up to 100. And then we put a Facebook thing, hey, we're serving meals. So we started feeding 150. Then it went to 200. Now we're feeding 200. And last night we did it, 250, over 1,000 meals every single month. And here's the incredible thing. Cars come in, and many of them say, you know what? We're not here for the meal. We're here because we see your church was hit by the tornado. Our church was the epicenter. We have 21 acres. Our trees are down. Our neighbors behind us, their houses are completely destroyed. We still have a building up, our roof and the stairwell's gone. But anyway, we were able to get some repair and still meet in here. So, well, what are we going to do for our community? And this is what they said. We're here and we want to give you money because we see that you were hit and you still want to reach our community. So it's been really exciting. There's a doctor that comes through every single Tuesday, almost every single Tuesday. And he says, I don't want a meal. I just am so proud of you guys, what you're doing for our community. It just makes my heart glad. He'll give us $20 every time. We'll see other cars come in. They'll give us $100, $20. In fact, we've been getting, I don't know, we've got several $1,000s from people just saying, hey, and we've not asked for a penny. We've not asked for one dime. But some of the neat things that have happened is that we had, as we've gone out, and we can show this picture, it's a single mother, and she had 4 children. And so we talked to her. I was talking to her. I said, hey, how would you like us to come and help? And so we went out. And so you'll see this picture of this mother and 4 children, and then you'll see her house. And we said, how can we help? So we went and cleaned up her yard. A bunch of us from the church went and cleaned up her yard. And it was, I'm not sure, did the picture come through? Hopefully the picture came through of the mother and maybe.
No, I don't have the picture.
Anyway. Okay. Well, I've got a picture of her right here. I don't know if you can see this very good, but this is the picture of the mother and her children. And then here's her house. Here's her house. Can you believe it? And so the tornado, as you can see, just really devastated. There's all kinds of pictures here of devastation from the tornado. It looks like a war zone. So she said that she gathered her kids and they went into a bathroom and things just blew away, but they were all safe. So we went clean. In fact, there was a roof from a school about 1.5 miles away in her yard that we cleaned up. And the stories we heard, one of the pictures that I had, and I don't know if it was this picture, I think, I was talking to the guy and he says, yeah, he says, I have 2 teenagers. And he said, my son and daughter were upstairs, and he says, look, you need to come down. There's a tornado coming our way. The daughter came, but the boy said, Dad, I'm going to be fine. So he said, I walked up. He's telling me the story. I walked up and I grabbed my son by the arm. I said, no, you're coming down. We got in the laundry room. It was a small laundry room, but he said, we felt that was the center of the house. And he says, as I grabbed my son and we were closing the door, he said, the second floor flew off. The second floor, he says, my son would have been with it. One guy in his family he was talking to, they walked out of their house. Listen to this. They walked out of their house and the front door, and they were in the backyard. The whole house was lifted off the foundation and twisted and did a 180, and they went in their backyard. So the stories that we heard and the people that we were helping, it was just so neat to make these connections and get to know these people. And they thank us all the time for just being there for them. Now, it's not that we're doing anything great. It's just that we saw a need and we decided to do something about it. So, a dream without action is just a dream. But if you have action, it makes all the difference. And you have to put a time on it, a deadline. And so some of the things that have happened has been really neat. One of the things is since we've been really reaching our community, we have 2 cars given to us. That's right, 2 cars have been given to us. And on the 14th, not this Sabbath, but next Sabbath, we're giving the keys to a single mother. And anyway, it's going to be exciting. If you're in the area, come and join us. It's going to be after our 11 o'clock service. We're going to be giving the keys to a lady who is a single mom with a couple of kids. So I'm really excited about that. We're also decided to do a little bit of a survey as the people come through, rather than just us doing what we think needs to be done. We took a survey and asked all those who were coming through, hey, if there's anything we could do for you, what would it be? What would the one thing that you feel needed? And you know what was interesting is an ESL class, English as a Second Language. And we're planning to start that this Sunday. We just found out. So we're going to actually start this Sunday. Now, Hamilton, before COVID, I want to just tell you a little bit about kind of the vision that we had. We felt that as soon as people drive in the driveway, just the appearance of the church, making certain that the landscaping looks nice. We have good markings as to when they come in. We have greeters. I tell you, our greeters, I think, are the most important part of ministry, because you only get about 90 seconds for that first impression, and then to determine whether they'll be there the next 90 minutes or 90 days for that matter. So that first connection that we make. So we open the door. Now, this is before COVID, okay? So now we're taking temperature, and we don't hand them a bulletin or anything like that. We open the door, we welcome them. We have a second layer where when they come in, we want to make certain that we get them connected. And usually you can find out if they're a guest. We don't say visitors, they're a guest. The reason we say guest, like if you're at a hotel, nice hotel, you're a guest, but not a visitor. You're a guest. Visitors come and go, but a guest, you want them to stay. You want their visit to be really grand. So they will ask them, and we can usually find out who's a guest because they're the ones who will read the bulletin. Our members don't. And then we'll connect them and say, hey, would you like to go to a study time, or find them a seat? And we're not really perfect at this, but this is our intention. And then we really want to get their contact information too, because we want to keep them informed with what's going on, and we want to connect them back. We want their experience to be so good that they'll come back. So during the service, this was years ago, and we're going to resurrect it again. We would say, hey, if you're a first-time guest, we want to thank you for being here. Go to our welcome center. We have a gift for you. And then I would say, and we want to get your contact information because we want you back so bad that we're going to send you a gas card. We want you back so bad, we're going to send you some gas money, and we're going to mail it to you. And so we were sending a little gas card so that they would come back. And let me tell you something, that really was a huge hit. And we do have the gas cards. We're going to plan to do that again here soon. We have 3 services now. We started with 2 after COVID, and we have a 10 o'clock, 11, and 12. Mass required at our first one, because we want to make certain everyone has an opportunity if they feel that, hey, I want a real safe environment. So we have mass required, and then we have the 11 and 12 where it's recommended. And we have our largest group at the 11 o'clock service, but then we're getting a good group at 12 too, and they're only 45-minute services. And we try to make certain that we do all their social distancing and everything is done well. So we want to make certain that people feel real safe when they come and really connected. And so we have people that are really gifted in making certain that, hey, if they see a new face, they make certain that they feel welcome and that they get them back. And we've had really good success with that. Also too, we're doing what's called New to HCC, text 33777. So if you're new, we do this every Sabbath. Say, text this, and then we have a team that, especially one lady, her name is Susan. She will reach out to that person, thank them for coming, and welcome them. Also, too, when they do sign that if they do it on an iPad, say, hey, it's their first time and they got a gas card. What was happening right at that moment? They would get a letter from me saying, hey, thank you for coming to Hamilton. We hope your experience was good. And then we're creating little gift bags for them too. So we want them to make certain they come. Now, when I was in Peachtree City, we had started this, and we thought, well, Peachtree City, they were giving a peach pie to every single new guest. So if they were a new guest, we got their contact information. Within 48 hours, they had a peach pie at their front door. Isn't that cool? So I was thinking about Hamilton, Peachtree City, a peach pie. What could we do for Hamilton? We were thinking maybe a ham. I don't know. No, I'm just joking. No, don't write me emails. We didn't do that. We do muffins, and we do gas cards. So it's really worked. It's really been a cool thing. Now, we try to target everyone, but here's why you want to target men. And I know that North Point, Rock Point runs from us, but North Point targets 19 to 39-year-old men. I was in North Carolina, I was driving, and I heard this. It was just amazing. I mean, it just really shocked me. It says, if a woman joins the church, there's a 17 to 21% chance that her family will join. But if a man joins the church, listen, there's a 91 to 93% chance that his family will join. See, that's why you really want to gear your church toward men. Not that you're trying to leave out women and children, but when you do that, you've got the whole family. So we're trying to create an atmosphere where you create a church where unchurched people would love to attend, and make certain that they want to come back and really feel welcome. Now, Brian Tracy, I've been reading his book. He tells about a series of IQ tests that were given to children ages 2 to 4. 95% of these children were found highly creative, with curious, questioning minds, with an ability for attractive, abstract thinking. When the same children were tested again at the age of 7, only 5%. Remember, it was 95% when they're 2 to 4. Now, at the age of 7, going through school, and it says only 5% demonstrated high levels of creativity. In the ensuing years, they had learned to conform. See, if you want to get along, you better, just go along with the crowd. And so they learned to color between the lines, sit in nice straight rows, raise their hand, do as the other kids were told. So they suppressed the ideas of insights. And anyways, they usually change our school system, especially public school system, will create children to not think abstractly. And so I was thinking about this, and I read a study that only 10% of our brain is used. Well, according to Brian Tracy, only 2%. Only 2%. And the average American spends 6 hours and 43 minutes a day on a screen. Did you know that? And this is ages 7 to 70. I mean, there's really no limit to that. More and more people are getting on the screen. So we've created live stream. I'm sure most of you have too with COVID. But here's the thing. We're reaching people in Brazil, Germany, all over the country. And we're finding that when we do a Facebook post or advertisement, that it really works. Facebook is one of your best ways to advertise. When we advertise that for our Tuesday evening meals, it almost doubled. I mean, it just increased incredibly. We decided to do a survey too, or I guess you'd say just kind of a little test to see what would happen. And we had a guy, his name was Ismail, get on our Facebook. Remember, there's more people who attend church in Chattanooga than any other city in the nation, and there's more churches per capita. So we thought we would see what we could do with Facebook. We have more likes on our our Facebook page than any other church in Chattanooga. So we were pretty excited about that. But Facebook is really an amazing way to advertise. So this is something that you don't want to miss. Now, when you look at how things transpire, you know, COVID, the tornado, I think it was Andy Stanley who said that marry your mission, not your methods. Remember, it's not your programs or your methods really as a church that is sacred as your mission. So your mission statement should be very clear so that you know how you're going to reach your community. Something else too, and I'm kind of bringing it to probably about 10 minutes, and then we'll have questions and answers. Years ago, I was listening to Voice of Prophecy, and someone said that here in America, listen to this. This is very, very shocking to me. We were hovering in those years about 900,000 Seventh-day Adventists in America. And then we finally crossed the million mark. And the Voice of Prophecy said there could be close to 10 million Seventh-day Adventists in North America if we just hung on to our young people. I thought, whoa. You know, I hear that, I've heard different reports that, you know, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5 of our kids leave. I heard here this week, it's 59% leave our church. And I don't know if they come back. But here's something interesting. Every 21 seconds, and I just looked this up, every 21 to 23 seconds, there's a brand new Seventh-day Adventist in the world. That's about 180 every hour, 4,320 every day, 1,576,800 every year. There's a brand new church, Seventh-day Adventist church, somewhere built every 3.5 hours. Isn't that incredible? So we're growing rapidly, but we're losing our young people, and we could have 10 million in North America if we just hung on to our young people. So I asked, I believe his name was Angel Rodriguez. I said, is that true? And I didn't think I'd hear back from him, but guess what? He actually called me back. He didn't write me, he called me back. And he says, Dave, he said, I want to tell you something. I've done a little research. And he says, not only is true, it's worse than you think. And I thought, well, how could it be any worse than that? I mean, he said, well, here's the deal. Let's suppose we never won one convert 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, decades ago. We never won one convert. All we did was hung on to our Seventh-day Adventist children. Isn't that amazing? He said, we can have close to 10 million, maybe even more here in North America, here in the United States. So what are we doing to hang on to our youth, our young people? And we here at Hamilton, we feel that this is so crucial that we hang on to our young people and create ways where they want to stay, where they serve. And we are involving them in worship. We're making certain that they feel that they're important and needed, and we listen to them. David Kinnaman says, not only do we need to convert to the gospel of Christ, we need to deconvert from the religion of self. And self wants to rise to the top all the time. And we have to remember that everything has to be driven by what's the next generation going to do. And it's so sad to see so many leaving. And so what are we doing to hang on to our youth? And so we have two missions: connecting the disconnected. Whether they left or whether they've never joined the church, we want to find ways to do that. I was talking to Don Keel. He's part of our youth outreach here at the conference. And I'd heard there's maybe 7,000 to 10,000 former Adventists in the greater Chattanooga area. And he told me, he says, Dave, he says, there's probably closer to 20, 25,000. HMS Richards used to say this. This is really, you might want to write this down. He said, this is what worked for him. And I've used it many times. When you meet a former Adventist who kind of, you know, drifted or was hurt, whatever, you ask them this question. You get to know them, you build a relationship, and then you ask them this. Hey, what's keeping you from coming back to church? Hey, what's keeping you from coming? What would it take for you to come back? More people came back, he said, and there's an 80% chance that they will come back if you ask. Isn't that amazing? If all we did was ask, you know, most of them said, well, no one ever asked. So asking and say, hey, I'll meet you there this Sabbath. I'll sit with you. I'll be with you. But asking them to come back, just asking. And we're always inviting our members to ask. Almost every week, someone from our church will say, hey, Pastor, I brought so-and-so. I brought so-and-so. And they love bringing their friends to church. And I love seeing it. To me, creating an environment where they want to come back, that's where it gets real exciting. Let me just share one story with you. I run with this guy. His girlfriend would come occasionally. And so anyway, started running with him, and we got to be pretty good friends. And he'd come occasionally and over time. And by the way, when I first met him, he was like almost living out of his car. He had nothing, and just super guy though, young guy in his 20s. And so we'd run and we'd mountain bike together. And then after a while, he got into real estate and started selling property and developing property a little bit. And one day, this is years had gone by, we're talking, and he says, he says, you probably don't realize it, but almost every run we have, you begin to talk about the Lord and what he's done for you. And he says, you brought me to the Lord, and I can't thank you enough. He says, wait here. And he went to his car, and he came back with a check for $15,000. I thought, wow. I said, is that for me or for the church? I gave it to the church. Then he wrote another one a few months later for $20,000. This guy just loved the church. And, I didn't push him. He's not a member, but he told me this. He says, when I do join the church, it'll be you that will baptize me. So I'm excited about that. And there's some people that are out of state. They watch us online, and they'll send $20,000, $30,000 at a time. They just love what's going on. They look at the live stream and say, you're reaching so many young people, and we really do. We're trying to target a lot of our young people. We've gotten acquainted with our neighbors. We're reaching them. But here's my last story, and then I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. And that is, I'm driving home from church on a Sunday. I had to be here for Sunday. And for some reason, I decided to go to Taco Bell. So I pulled into the drive-through, and then something just told me, and I'm not the kind of person that says, the Lord spoke to me, but I felt like the Lord was speaking to me to go inside. I thought, well, I don't know who I'm going to meet inside. And I waited in line. I thought, well, okay, this impression is so strong. So I parked the car. Listen, if I hadn't done this, if I had listened to that voice, I parked the car. I'm walking into the Taco Bell, and as I'm walking in, this horn honks, and this lady goes like this, and she just pulls right out of the drive-through, and she says, Pastor Dave, Pastor Dave. She says, you won't believe this. She says, I was just up in Nashville. She was part of the Sandy Coleman Race for the Cure. And she said, I was driving back. She lived in, I believe it was Savannah, Georgia. And she says, I stopped to get something here at Taco Bell. And she says, this is Chattanooga. I watch Hamilton Community Church every week. My husband and I, and they were in the military, we watch every week. And I would love to meet that pastor, Pastor Dave. And she said, I just said a little prayer, said, Lord, one day I'd like to meet Pastor Dave. And she said, then you walked right in front of my car. And she said, I'm just so excited. And so she talked a little bit, and how her and her husband, the last message, that he broke down and cried, and how much it meant to him. And they said, we decided to give our hearts to Jesus. Live stream is such, you don't know the people that you will affect. And, if I hadn't listened to that voice, I'd just decide, that's nothing. I just, go through the drive-through. I would have missed that lady. There's so many opportunities out there that the Lord puts in front of us. And I'm just so excited. Oh, one last thing, and then I'll open for questions. While we're doing our meals out here, a little boy, he's probably about 7 or 8 years old, with his grandfather, and they parked his truck, and he came walking over and says, my grandson wants to give you something. And he hands me some money, and I think it was probably $15, $16. And he says, this is all of his allowance that he'd earned for the last couple months. And he saw what you were doing, and he wanted to give it to you. Now, I could have said no. I could have said, we don't need this money and thank you anyway. But I could just tell how much it meant to this little boy to give that money. So I knelt down and I just looked at the little boy and I said, do you remember the story of that little boy who gave Jesus his little loaves and fishes and how it fed 5,000 people? I said, I'm sure it's going to feed that many, if not more. And that boy's just face lit up. Later, that grandpa came back that same day. He says, you have no idea. And he was in tears. You have no idea how much that meant, what you said to my grandchild. And it made the world, meant the world to me too. And then he hands me $50 and he came back and gave more money too later the next week. But just making a difference it's been such a positive experience. Sometimes a door closes, but the Lord will open another door. So I'm going to open up for questions and anything that you'd like to share. I don't think my last picture came through. I tried to send that. But anyways, if you have any questions, okay, Bob Clayton, how can any church be more relevant in their community? Man, that's such a great question. I think you have to look at your community and find out, maybe go to the Better Business Bureau, go to your city clerk and find out, hey, what is the one thing that we need here? Or do a survey with your neighbors. I know, Bob, you actually did a survey and you found out that ESL is one of the things that will really reach this community. That's something they're looking for. We also think a food pantry will be helpful, but we did a movie night too during COVID. We stopped counting at 250. We did it 3 times. Our last one, we had our second to last or last one, we had over 250, close to 300. So find out what it is that is going to reach your community, and maybe just trial and error. So great question. Don Davis asks, how many of your ministries at Hamilton have had to shut down due to COVID, and how many others have adapted? Yeah, we still have Life Group, and I had a picture of Life Group. We're still trying to do those online. I think most of what we've done has adapted. Our evangelism, we didn't do J-Fest, we didn't do other things, but we do what's called Build a Bed, Sleep in Heavenly Peace. There's a guy named Bob Hershey in our church that kind of heads this up in Chattanooga. And so our church gets involved. We use probably a quarter of the parking lot in Lowe's, and we built these beds, and then people would come along and ask, but it's where no child sleeps on the floor. So we're trying to find ways that every ministry can still be involved. But yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know if many shut down, but I do say we did adapt. Our children's department is still doing Zoom, so they didn't shut down, but they had to adapt. So great question, Don Davis. Thank you. I have a Don Davis in my church. I don't know if you're the same Don Davis. Any other questions that you have? Anything else that you can think of? I'm going to tell you a little bit about this guy. His name is, okay, Our Life Group meets in person. Yes, there are some groups that meet in person still, and that's really exciting. We as a church, we feel this is a huge part of the DNA at Hamilton. A quick little story there. I in church one day, I said, our sign, and I had a picture, our sign, the letters are falling off. We had 2 letters that fell off. And you know what they were? It was in church, you are. Honestly, it was you are. And says, what's missing from this church? You are, remember that? And so the U and the R were hanging, just fell off. And so I mentioned that. And one of our life groups, it was Chris Hayes' life group, that week, I kid you not, it was that very week, they went out there and they cleaned that thing up. They put up the letters. They spruced up all the little bushes around there and pulled weeds. I mean, it looked really nice, really nice. So that was kind of a neat thing that happened there. So another question is, how are you connecting with members and guests who have not returned to church since the church outbreak of COVID? Yeah, he's in Sharpsburg, South Carolina. Okay, Sharpsburg. Um, Here's what we've done. Um, our elders and myself have broken up all of the membership names. We decided to call everybody, just call them, even though they weren't coming to church, or even if they were coming to church, just to stay connected. Now, this has been done early during the COVID, but I talked to Paul Moose, our head elder, and he wants to do it again to keep connected. Now, if they don't return to church, we have our live stream, and this really keeps people connected. And here's some other things that I'm doing every day. I do Monday through Thursday. I do a devotional. I hadn't done this and started doing it during COVID. So I do a 10-minute devotional every morning. We walk through the book of John, the Gospel of John. Then we went through 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and now we're in the book of Ephesians. So I'm walking them through the Bible, and that's connecting them. I do a podcast every Tuesday, letting them know the updates of everything that's going on. And then during church, we have all of our announcements. We're trying to keep them connected, and they can, during our live stream, there's a connecting thing too, where they can talk to us. But anyway, it's been really a neat way to stay connected, even though we're disconnected in a way. We've actually, one of our neighbors back here, his name is Nathan, and we've gotten to know most of our neighbors in the back. Their houses were completely destroyed. I mean, completely destroyed. So what we've done is we've asked them if there's any needs that they have. We've helped them clear some of their area. There was a lady who needed a little storage. We said, go ahead and put it on our parking lot. And there's a guy, his name is Jerry Duckworth, and his basement was flooding because the creek was rising over. We went out there and cleared that this past Sunday. So we're connecting with our neighbors in such a positive way, unlike we ever have before. I mean, this to me, seeing our church connect with the community, not to say that we were closed in, but now we're so connected. And I'm so excited about giving away this car in a couple of weeks to this person who's not a member of our church, and to see our church family see this happen. We want to start a car ministry where we change oil for single parents, maybe do other things, maybe once a month or twice a month, do something for our community with their cars. So there's a lot of things that we're going to continue to connect with. Any other questions that you have? Any other questions? Hey, I'm going to share this really neat story that happened here. And this is how we just let our members know, hey, if you have a family member that's really not connected. And so this lady came to me and she says her husband, he was 93 years old. He was an atheist. She asked me if I would start studies with him. So I went to their house. His name was Oscar. And I went to Oscar's house, and she just let me study with him. And guess what? The first study didn't go well. I kid you not. He did not appreciate it. And I think I did it 4 times, and I just kind of read him, like, and he was a professor in a university, and he was really smart. He actually had studied Darwinism, and I think he even taught a class in it. So he didn't really agree with me. I mean, he let me come. So I realized that we were kind of not on the same page. So I prayed about it, and it was like this. The Lord said, just be his friend. I found out he loved like classical music, Beethoven, Bach, and all those greats. So I decided to study up on them, and we go and we talk about it. I got a little lazy, so he couldn't see very well. He was really sharp. And I'd pull up on my phone, like Beethoven, I'd read, knew that he never had children. He had a nephew that he loved, and he could compose when he was like, I think he was 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. He made a composition that just, you didn't have to change a thing. And so, anyway, he was like, wow, how do you know all that? I said, oh man, I just, know. So we became really good friends. He started coming to my church. He sat in the second row on the left. I mean, every week he was there and we talked a little bit about what I said. And he said, I appreciate what you say, but I'm not into it. And so I remember years went by, like 3, 4 years. And I just turned to the Lord. I said, Lord, I said, I want to see him in the kingdom. I mean, he's like 98 years old now. Well, it is written, John Bradshaw was in town. I said, hey, why don't we go hear John Bradshaw? So his wife, Diane, took him, and I think it was the third night. And I had been praying for Oscar. And one Friday night, I got up at 3 a.m. and I began praying for Oscar. The next morning here at church, true story, his wife, Diane, said, you'll never guess what happened in the middle of the night. I said, what time? She said, 3 a.m. My husband bolted out of bed and he said that the Lord told him, Oscar, it's not that hard to believe in me and it's not going to hurt. And you'll get to be with your family forever and you'll get to see your dad again. He was from Germany. And when I think he was 4 years old, he left. His dad was a watch repairman and never saw his father again. You'll get to see your father. And anyway, that story stayed with him, but it was like the Lord told him, hey, you'll get to see your dad. You'll get to be with your family. And he just started crying. And his wife said that the Lord revealed to him. Well, we talked about it that Monday, but he kind of said, well, it was just a dream. I prayed again the next Friday. He had the same dream again. And he said, yeah, it was real, but I've been an atheist all my life. So we go to Bradshaw meetings. The third night, he gives his heart to Jesus. She texts me, says, come to the lobby. And he says, I decided to give my heart to the Lord. He said, I wasn't going to fight it anymore. And it was one of the most thrilling moments of my life. I'll never forget. And not only, it doesn't end there, it gets better because a few weeks later, he actually goes downhill. He's in hospice, and we all know what hospice is. And I'd go to see him, and he's kind of like slumped in a chair and hardly even knew me. But one day, a nurse comes into his office or into his room and says, he just bolts up and says, young lady, you have a big red book in your house and you need to get it out and study it. She thought, oh, senile old guy, he just kind of slumps back over. But the next day she comes back. He said, young lady, I told you, you have a big red book in your house. You need to get it out and study it because I know you didn't. She said, well, how did he know that? She goes back to her house, and of course, it's a big family Bible that she'd never opened before. And Diane started studying with her. Oscar has since passed away. But I think of how the Lord had reached that individual. I know that God can reach anyone, no matter how old they are. It's never too late. And the connecting the disconnected by sharing Jesus through loving and serving has always been our MO, our modus operandi, our main objective. And if your church, if you remember that our main objective, and we're going to look at it in our board meetings, in our minutes, it's going to reflect that we're going to reach those who are disconnected. I know that the Lord will bless. Well, I think we're about out of time. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, yeah, go ahead.
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This is Ralph. I'm wondering, I really appreciate all your outreach and so forth, but I'm an evangelist, and I wonder, do you have, or what mechanisms do you have to actually call for a decision of those that you're meeting? What process, or is that something you're still working on?
Hey, that's a great question. What we do, there's a couple of ways. After every sermon, I say, hey, listen, we have some elders over here. They're wearing the purple shirts. And if you have any questions about the message today or online, you're welcome to connect with us. but they're here to pray for you, to answer any questions, and we always make an appeal. Every message we make our services, our worship services, evangelistic. We also feel that creating friendships are crucial there in the community with these individuals. Our whole point for the ESL class is creating friendships, inviting them to church. And like I said, our members are our evangelistic tools. I think you heard me say that almost every week someone has been bringing someone to church. I can't tell you how many stories of people who just came to church for the first time. There was a lady who said that she was a Seventh-day Adventist. She hadn't set foot in a church for 31 years. And she said that she had heard about Hamilton and said, "Okay, I'm going to give it a try." And so she rejoined the Seventh-day Adventist Church because of our welcoming spirit. And so we actually had Roger Hernandez come and did a series called "Everyone Has Hope." So we did do an evangelistic series here also, and had really good results on that. We have an appeal every Sabbath, and every member, I said that there are 859 ministers in this church. There are 2 pastors, but 859 ministers. You're all ministers, and you are God's hands and feet to reach this community. So we try to make certain that our church is so evangelistic, creating friendships. And the neat thing is, Ralph, is that once they come to church, they almost always like coming back. They love the atmosphere. They love the. Does that kind of answer your question some?
Do you ever give an opportunity with a card, with upfront, personally
Yeah.
ask about, would you like to be baptized?
Oh, yes. In fact, many times I've made altar calls asking if anyone has the Holy Spirit speaking to your heart and you've never been baptized, or maybe you have been baptized, but you feel that the Holy Spirit's reaching you right now. So we do that very often. Every time I have a baptism, I make an appeal also. And, baptisms produce baptisms. And so we just had 2 people baptized a couple weeks ago. And as a result of that, I had a lady come up to me. Her name is Dana. It was her first time in church in many, many years. She says, "I want to be baptized." I'm studying with her right now. And because we make appeals all the time. But yeah, we do use decision cards, not as much as just verbal appeal though, but we have used decision cards.